So the Dodge Ram nameplate has been around since 1980 when it was first given to the full-size trucks from the Mopar brand. And that first generation of the Ram ran all the way from 1980 to 1993. Today, we're going to have a look at the second generation of the Ram, which ran from 1994 to 2002 in the form of this 1996 Ram 1500 extended cab, long bed, V8, 5-speed, 4-wheel drive, you name it, it may have it. And hopefully this video should answer any of the questions you have about the second generation Ram, or at least the earlier versions like this. They were facelifted in about 1998 with a different interior and a few different options you could get. But we're going to go over everything from the front of the truck to the back of the truck to driving to anything that you would really want to know about it. And while this truck is not fully loaded by any means with options, it is probably one of the best ones I could have used to film a review, other than a special edition or something, because it only has 128,000 miles or so on it right now. And it's actually in great shape, besides a little bit of rust here and there, and of course this funky paint it's got on the hood here. But it's definitely something you don't see with, under 180,000, 200,000 miles on a daily basis. And of course, if you'd like to have me film a video of your car similar to this video, be sure to send me an email at the address located on the screen right now, especially if you're within the St. Louis area or the surrounding couple hundred miles. And so this Ram does feature the green exterior with a gray cloth interior. And I have to say this interior has held up very well over the last 23 years. And as I've mentioned, this truck only has 128,000 miles on it, 128,119 to be exact. And so let's take the key. Just have the Pentastar as well as the Ram logo on it. Got that nice super 90s buzzer. So we'll go ahead and close the door. It's actually two buzzers. If you notice, one actually turned off there after a second. But we'll go ahead and start it up. As I've said, this is a 5-speed manual. And let's fire it up. It's still surprisingly quiet for being a vehicle like this. Overall, the interior is very simple in this truck, as in it is a truck, especially from the 90s, even though they started kind of getting more luxurious a few years after this. Starting over here on the far left, you do have your power mirror controls, power window and power locks, and a speaker down below. With your door handle way down here, it's kind of an interesting spot for it, and this nice little handle here, which works very, very well for closing the door. Up top, light controls. Pull them on, push them off, and you can also change the gauge dimmer with this, turn on the interior lights, as well as the cargo lights, which you can't see, but they do work, even though the third brake light does not. Over here you have your windshield wiper controls. As I've said, this one is messed up, so if I turn it to off, this is what I get, and if I turn it to high, they stop. So I just kind of have to stop them on my own. Not too big of a deal though. It does have a tilt steering wheel, as you can tell right back here. Flashers up there, horn buttons on either side of the steering wheel, which does say Dodge on it. Cruise control down below, which sadly does not work. You just turn it on by that, and you have your set and resume buttons right down there. And the steering wheel isn't in fantastic shape. It's got a few little divots here and there where it has been worn down. Previous owner actually had a cover over it, but I have not purchased one of those yet, and I don't really plan to. But it's not too bad. 4 gauges. You do have a fuel gauge, oil pressure, tachometer, speedometer, voltage, as well as your coolant temperature gauge on the far right. All nicely laid out and very easy to read. And a long odometer. And this is right here is where you would see your park, neutral, reverse, and drive if this was an automatic truck, but this one is not. Down below you do have some little warning lights. As I'll show off later, this truck actually has something kind of cool. It has a shift light right here next to the brake light. And basically it tells you when to shift for maximum economy, as well as I have noticed that it does show you when to shift if you are revving the engine past about 4,500 RPMs, as I'll show. Here in the center you do have one of the most interesting parts of the interior of this truck, as in my opinion at least, is the climate controls right here. You have your temperature down below, fan speed, as well as your zones up top. Now the interesting thing about it to me is that normally cars have an AC mode. They have a button or a just turning the temperature down to the bottom gives you AC. In trucks like these, you have fan speeds in either direction. So I could turn it on, you know, the second fan speed for AC if I want the AC on, or turn it on to the normal fan and it'll just blow out either cold air or hot air depending on where the temperature's set at. And the interesting thing about this is that it's not really interesting. It's kind of a pain if you don't look at this, or if your lights go out for this, you can't easily tell where it is. So you just kind of have to guess based on how much air is coming out where the center of this is, because there's no, I mean, unless you count the specific like notches, there's no defining thing to tell you, hey, this is where off is. Even though you just turn this off and it basically turns everything off, which I feel like this is also off on the fan, and this is also off, so I don't know. It's kind of weird, but it works, so it's not a big deal. Dig a little cubby hole up here, which I think this is where the four-wheel drive buttons would go if it didn't have a manual four-wheel drive system, as you can see down there. Cup holders right here in the middle. They're fairly useful, they're not too bad. Radio, which this is aftermarket. If I go down here, you can see it's very easy to operate. It's just got tiny buttons and volume switcher and whatever. And then right next to that is my $20 FM Bluetooth receiver thing, where basically this is like a radio station, basically. As you can tell, it says FM1, or it does say FM1, doesn't it? It says FM 105.3. So I switch it to 105.3 on the radio, and I pair it with my phone on Bluetooth, and it will play whatever's playing on my phone through the radio without having to have an aux cord or USB, which sadly this radio does not have because it came out in 2002. So yeah, and also including with this radio, it does have a CD changer. As you can tell, there's a thing right down there for it. There's a remote over there, and it's actually underneath the seat, as I've shown in previous videos. Ashtray down below. This is the cigarette lighter, which would be normally there, but that thing's plugged in there. And another interesting thing is that the power outlet is always powered, but the cigarette lighter, whatever you want to call it, is only powered whenever the key's on, or whenever the key's on accessory or on position. Strangely enough. I don't know why, but yeah. Also that goes to, of course, my dash cam, which is right up there. Manually dimming rearview mirror, little cubby hole for your sunglasses up here, which I actually use a lot. Lights, and no mirror, but you do get a little thing that tells you how to use four-wheel drive, and a caution thing. And then down here in the footwell, you get a few interesting things. This is a trailer brake right here. As you can tell, you can basically use it yourself, or if you hit the brakes, it'll help the trailer brake pretty much. Next to it is a little switch that somebody installed for the fog lights that are up front, because those were definitely not factory. Four-wheel drive transfer case right here. It's pretty simple to operate. You just pull it back. It's in four-wheel drive. Go over there. Right there is neutral, and then back there is four-wheel drive low. And if I do this right, it will show them in four-wheel drive right over there. And you just push it forward and it turns off. Now the interesting thing about this is that a lot of trucks, basically if your truck has four-wheel drive with a manual or like a lever for the transfer case like this, a lot of times it's connected directly to the transfer case itself, and it literally, like, you're actually moving parts within the transfer case to switch it from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive. Not in this truck. For whatever reason, even though there's no button to do four-wheel drive, the transfer case is all vacuum operated. So if your vacuum goes out, which luckily mine has kind of, because the cruise control doesn't work, and also the fan or the zone selector does not really work all too well, if your vacuum goes out for the transfer case, you can't go in the four-wheel drive even though you're actually physically moving the lever, which I find incredibly strange and a little bit of a design flaw, honestly, in my opinion. But it's not too bad. It's pretty easy to fix if these ever go out and whatnot, but just a weird little thing. And as I mentioned, this truck does have a 5-speed manual. Simple to operate. Over there's reverse. Very, very simple. This truck does feature a very nice center console. It actually has a lot of space in it. And it also does flip up into a seat, even though everything's going to fall out if I do this, but whatever. Do have a middle seat in the front, even though that's kind of hindered by the fact that I have a manual transmission. But it's still there in case anybody wants to use it. And so we'll shut it off and check out the outside. As you can really notice, this truck is mostly stock. It has the original wheels, headlights, everything like that, which is not something you usually see on trucks of this vintage. Mostly people have modified them like crazy with custom headlights and wheels and lift kits and all that. And I think that this is a good truck to film because it is, again, mostly stock. It's not been, crazily modified to where you don't really know what the actual stock truck was like. And of course, this truck is a extended cab long bed, so it is the longest truck you could possibly get in 1986. Even the dualies were this long, the extended cab dualies. The wheelbase did not change at all. So in the review part later on, I'm going to show you exactly what it's like to daily drive this thing. So for interesting quirks, as I like to put in these videos, starting with the last 400 video, this truck doesn't really have a lot of really interesting stuff to it. Most of the stuff that I've noticed is like stuff that is, old-fashioned or just different in the truck world, not so much in everything. And that's going to start off with the fact that this truck actually has a solid front axle, unlike Chevy and Ford, where they had went to independent front suspension by the mid-90s like this. And that makes this one of the last four-wheel drive trucks you could get with a straight axle in the front. And it's got its pros and cons, but it doesn't really seem to take away from the ride of the truck at all. As mentioned before, the Ram nameplate was first introduced for the trucks in 1981, after just being called the D100 or the D150 beforehand. And while it was technically the start of the first generation, it was actually just a continuation of the older trucks. The main chassis and everything was still the same. So in 1994, the Ram got its first big upgrade and was very modernized. The styling was definitely the biggest jump forward, with the Ram going from about as boxy as you could possibly imagine to being one of the first truly rounded off trucks. The second generation Ram was also the first truck to feature the taller grille, as you see here, which a lot of trucks I guess have copied off of in the past few years. The redesign also helped the Ram in sales by a huge margin. After selling only about 95,000 trucks in 1993, in 1994 it went straight to 230,000 trucks, and then after that up to 400,000 per year. Which explains a lot of why there's so many around today still. There were 4 different body style options you could get in the 1994 to 2002 Ram, from the single cab long bed to the single cab short bed, as well as the extended cab long bed and short bed respectively as well. And my truck that you see here is the longest that you could get even out of the dualies and everything. It is the extended cab long bed, and it's roughly about 20 feet long. The Ram did feature a bit of a refresh in 1998, with different mirrors, as well as a slightly different interior. This Ram features the optional 16-inch alloy wheels, running on LT 265 75 R16 tires. And the only other big modification from this truck that wasn't factory was this camper shell as you see here. Basically, it's to keep out the elements if you want to keep stuff in there and keep it dry, and basically all you have to do is just go up here with the key, which I had some keys made for this luckily. Do that, twist this, go to the other side, do the same thing. You just turn these. And then you lift up. Tailgate opens as normal. You can't really open the tailgate with the camper shell window down, which is kind of a safety thing, I guess. and it goes up pretty far, as you can tell here. It goes up very far, actually, and it's held up perfectly fine. And there's wires cut for the third brake light, I guess. I don't know actually how the third brake light works in this at all. But here is the bed of the truck. And of course, as you can tell, being that this is a long bed, it actually has a lot of space in here. There's a lot of space in front of the wheel wells, behind the wheel wells, just for anything you want to haul, really at all. Like, there's just really endless possibilities, except for, of course, you can't really do like a four-wheeler or dirt bike. I guess you could probably put a dirt bike in here if you have it kind of sideways, but that's not really what this was made for. It's made out of fiberglass, it seems. It's got a light in here that doesn't work, and the third brake light doesn't work. I can confirm that. And there's not really much else to say. It's got a plastic bed liner that is Dodge branded, so I would assume it came from either the factory or the dealership. Dealer installed. Has some nice spots where you can like put in boards that go across if you want to just keep something in this one certain area. This camper also does have a dual opening rear sliding window like the interior. So if you want to basically just have a pass-through all the way from the interior all the way to the bed out here, you can. And of course, if the one window is broken still, because I haven't fixed that because I don't really care all too much at the moment. And you can also open these side windows. I don't really know exactly how because I'm not, just like that. They do have little grates on them, so if you want to keep bugs out or something, you can. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and that's about it. They're held on by these weird clamps of sorts. And there's little tie-downs and crap too back here. So that's about it for the bed. Random thing I just noticed is that this must have had a police interceptor badge on it of some sort from like a Crown Victoria, I guess. I have no clue of why. Also, I did not put any of these bumper stickers on here. Those were all there whenever I got the truck, disappointingly. So let's hop into the passenger side real quick and check it out. Nothing too crazy over here. You do not get a passenger side airbag because that did not come standard until 1998 in these trucks. As I mentioned, here is the controller for the CD changer that is right under the seat right down here. I don't know how to work it at all because I can't figure out how to actually make the radio go to, CD in or something. But I'm not too worried about it because I don't usually listen. Even though I have been listening to CDs in my Lexus LS400, I don't really plan to in this truck, especially if I have this thing. Glove box, very, very small. But that, of course, is made up by the fact that the center console is nice and large. And really, other than that, you get a little mirror up here, which is nice. There's not really anything else to note. Mostly everything is kind of driver-oriented in this truck. And so, flipping this seat forward is pretty easy. You have the option of hitting this right here and pulling forward. Or I think you can actually use this too, but I'd much rather do it the other way. And a nice back seat. Now there is actually a decent amount of space back here, believe it or not. I'll sit on the driver's side. Now this is where I normally... Oh, apparently this seat doesn't lock either, that's nice. So there's not actually a lot of space, as you can tell. That's the seat all the way back in my normal driving position, and it's pushing my legs to the side. So it's not incredibly comfortable, per se, but I do have a little bit of headroom, which is nice. And the seat is also very comfortable, so that kind of makes up for it. Sliding rear window, pretty simple to operate. And you do also have one on the camper shell itself, even though I don't feel like trying to open it right at the moment. But these actually had the double sliding rear windows instead of the single like on newer trucks. You do have the rear side windows that do pop open. They're pretty simple to operate. Oh. You just basically do this, and it's closed, and then you do the opposite, and it's open. But there's not really any conveniences back here at all. You don't get cup holders. You don't really get anywhere to put anything because there's not any kind of space down below here, which is weird. I'd usually figure there would be a cup holder or something there. But it's not really a huge deal, I guess, because I don't really plan to have too many people back here. And if anybody is back here, I could probably just have them use the front cup holders or something. And then, also, if I hop out, you notice that there is no rear doors because this is a pre-1998 model and the rear doors came out in 98. But if I do this right here and pull on this little lever, pull up, you can push the rear seat up so you have a little bit of extra space back here. And down below the seat, you do have parts of the jack, like the tire iron and whatnot. And there is also more of the jack right under this. And so we'll pop the hood. And of course on these trucks, the release is right down here underneath the middle of the grill, which makes it kind of hard whenever you have one of these brush guards in here. But it's kind of hard to get around the brush guards, so it's kind of a two-handed job. But here is the 318 cubic inch V8. Something that is kind of neat that you have here under the hood is actually the trims for the truck, or what options the truck was ordered with, like rear axle wise and stuff like that. It's kind of a neat little aspect. So this truck has a 3.5 axle ratio, and it tells you what kind of transfer case it has and all that kind of stuff. As you can tell now, the truck is actually extremely quiet, even here under the hood. Doesn't have any kind of loud clanging or real loud engine, like metal noises. And this truck does feature an aftermarket K&N filter, which I'm kind of debating on replacing with the original, because this isn't really my style of how to do things. And here is the 318 cubic inch or 5.2 liter V8 engine that this Ram features. And it is one of the 3 engine options you could get in this truck in 1996. The base model's got a 3.9 liter V6, and the higher end sport models and stuff like that got the 5.9 liter V8. And on the 1500 models, you can only get the V6 as well as the 318 or 5.2 liter with the 5-speed manual. The 360 gas engine did have it on the 2500s as a very, very rare option, but all 1500 360s were automatics. And going along with that, one of the biggest flaws with these trucks in the 90s was the transmissions. They would go out constantly, always being rebuilds, and just didn't really last more than maybe 70 to 80,000 miles without starting to slip and pretty much just burning themselves out. And really, to be honest, I don't think I would own this truck if it wasn't a stick shift. If it would have been an automatic, I would have passed on it. But otherwise, the 318 is perfectly reliable. It's actually known to be one of the most reliable Dodge V8s ever made, and the 5-speeds definitely aren't bad either. As well as, funnily enough, the 318 made the exact same horsepower at 230 as the 360, with a little bit less torque at 295 foot-pounds instead of 335 foot-pounds. But really, the power difference wasn't that big between the smaller and bigger engine. So here's the thing, a truck like this is not meant for daily driving really, but a truck like this is mostly meant for somebody who's going to be towing something, maybe light, maybe not, maybe like a four-wheeler or small car or something like that, who might need to, you know, go off-road a little bit, not a lot, because while this thing is great off-road, well, I haven't really driven it off-road yet, but I've driven it in, you know, a few inches of snow, and it had absolutely zero problems whatsoever going through the snow in 4-wheel drive. 2-wheel drive gets a little sketchy because it's only got a single, or it's only got an open differential. But in 4-wheel drive, this thing is almost impossible to break loose on any kind of surface. So you basically put in a 4-wheel drive low and you have an unstoppable tank. But in reality, a person who buys a truck like this is not going to be driving it like that every day. And this truck is, yeah, it's more for a person who's going to, you know, say you have a lake house, or you have, you know, a secondary property where you take 4-wheelers or whatever on an average basis, and you want something that's comfortable, something that can handle it and tow, stuff like that, and not have to worry about reliability or anything like that. And that's what this truck is basically perfect for. Like, we're gonna take it on the highway here real quick, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Acceleration is not nothing to be amazed about. Like, this is foot to the floor, we just reached 60. While it is a stick shift, and that definitely does help out with acceleration a little bit, it's slow. There's no getting around the fact that this truck is nowhere near what I would consider fast at all. The thing it does have, though, is torque. Even though the 318 is not the optimal engine for a truck of this size, especially if you're going to be towing stuff and whatever, but it does what it needs to, and it does it fairly well. As I plug in my dash cam here. But yeah, like, actually, I just thought of the perfect use for this truck is somebody who has a boat, who goes to a lake that they, you know, is within their state or whatever. Like, you know, if I want to go to Lake of the Ozarks or something here in Missouri, this truck would be perfect for that, because you just put a boat on a trailer behind you and you just cruise down to the lake. And like, highway driving this thing is actually really nice. It's surprisingly smooth for having a straight axle front end, and just, you know, being what it is, being a 5,000 pound truck. And as you can tell, like, I mean, this highway is not great. It's not really bad per se. Like, there's no real big holes or anything in this highway, but it's like, I went over a bump there, you can barely tell. I mean, the dashboard rattled a little bit, and I heard a little bit of a bump. But other than that, like, I barely felt anything. It's incredibly smooth for what it is. And as I've mentioned before, these seats are they're just fantastic. I am honestly surprised every time I take this thing, you know, for a longer than, you know, 20-30 minute drive, of how comfortable the seats are. Like, my Lexus LS400, I get uncomfortable within an hour of sitting that thing in the driver's seat. And it's got, you know, leather seats. It's supposed to be this way high up luxury car, you know, from 2 years before this truck came out. Or, well, technically the same year, because this thing, these seats are probably the same as the 1994 Dodge Ram seats. And it's just amazing how comfortable it is. Because I don't know how Mopar did it, but their seats from like the mid 80s to like the late 90s were just like no other. It's incredible how comfortable they are. Like, I've driven later Dodge trucks, like we had a car hauler at my old work. It was a 99 or 2000, somewhere around there, Dodge truck. And it probably had very similar seats to these, but I remember, you know, not having a complaint at all during a couple-hour road trip way up north to grab some cars in that thing either. So Mopar was definitely doing something right with their seats, and I am very appreciative that the truck I love, because the thing about this truck is that I could have gotten a Chevy, I could have gotten a Ford, I could have gotten a Toyota, like a T100 or an early Tundra, but I love these trucks. I love the styling of them. I love the engine, the 360. I just love, you know, there's a lot I love about these trucks, and I'm really glad I finally got one, and I'm really glad that it's as nice as it is, because I was worried about, you know, I didn't know if it was going to be comfortable, really. I didn't know how the 318 was going to hold up or feel or anything like that, but it's not anything spectacular, but it's definitely good, I'd say. And so that will conclude this video. Thank you all so much for watching. And remember, if you'd like to see more videos like this one, you can subscribe down below, and you can also check out my Patreon for if you want to support the channel even more. And other than that, thank you all so much for watching, and for now, I'm out of here. See ya.